Okay, so what if the entire universe was actually locked in a cosmic war between good and evil? And what if you were called up to be a soldier in a heavenly independence army? Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful 1982 sermon from Reverend Moon that lays out exactly that vision, a huge, sweeping plan covering cosmic conflict, divine restoration, and a pretty radical call to action. Right from the jump, the sermon hits you with this incredibly stark image. I mean, this isn't just saying the world has a few problems. It's a full-blown emergency declaration. The speaker is positioning himself not as some distant teacher, but as a first responder on the scene. And the audience, you're the people who need to be rescued, like right now. This feeling of crisis really sets the stage for everything else. So, why the burning building analogy? Well, to really get the urgency here, we have to zoom way out and look at how this sermon sees the entire universe. According to this text, we're not just living with everyday problems. We're living on a battlefield. Now, what's fascinating is how this sermon presents this conflict with almost perfect symmetry. See, it's not just chaos versus order. It's two distinct, highly organized sovereignties. You've got a realm of goodness, centered on God, and on the other side, a fully realized realm of evil, centered on Satan. This isn't just a simple battle. It's a war between two rival kingdoms. Okay, so if you've got these two massive forces at war, where does that leave all of us? According to the sermon, we're stuck. We're trapped right in the middle. The idea is that because of the fall of man, humanity itself has become the contested territory, constantly being pulled between these two cosmic powers. Being caught between two warring kingdoms, yeah, that sounds pretty bleak. So you have to ask, is there a way out? Well, the sermon argues that yes, there is. And it's through a very detailed divine plan for restoration that it calls providence. Providence, in this context, is God's active plan to win back the world. But to make this kind of abstract idea more concrete, the sermon uses a very specific analogy, a symbolic journey up a hill, where the roles of men and women are absolutely central to the whole process. So this slide really breaks down how the sermon sees gender roles within this plan as dynamic, not static. It's a three-stage process. First, men take the lead on the difficult climb up. Then, as they get to the top, the point of restoration, women take the lead. And finally, men regain that leadership role for the last part of the journey into heaven. And the sermon ties this whole restoration plan directly back to the Garden of Eden. This reestablished order is framed as something called indemnity, which is basically a cosmic do-over. The text is arguing that this specific structure is exactly what's needed to correct the original mistake that led to the fall in the first place. Now, this whole theological framework, it's not just theory, It builds directly into a call to action. The sermon actually reframes its followers, casting them not just as believers, but as soldiers who have enlisted in a spiritual war. And let's be clear, this is not just some poetic language. The text is very direct. The movement is an army, and its mission, to fight for the independence of the kingdom of heaven and restore God's sovereignty on earth, a lot like how a revolutionary army would fight to establish a brand new nation. So what are the weapons of this spiritual army? Well, the sermon makes it super clear. We're not talking about swords or guns here. The arsenal is completely spiritual. It's made up of forces like truth, service, and unconditional love, weapons that the text claims Satan's realm has absolutely no defense against. And get this, loving one's enemy is presented as the ultimate strategic weapon. It's described as this force that just dismantles conflict from the inside out, basically leaving the opposition with no ground to stand on and no way to even retaliate. To really ground this spiritual mission in something historical, the sermon makes this really powerful comparison to George Washington and the American Revolution. What this does is it frames the whole movement not as something fringe, but as a legitimate struggle for a new kind of freedom and a new divine sovereignty. All right, so what's the end game of this whole spiritual revolution? The sermon lays out this absolutely grand vision for the future of all humanity, a goal that's actually captured in its title, One Sovereignty. The vision we're talking about here is one of total, complete unification, a world where all the divisions that separate us, things like national borders, different cultures, different languages, are completely erased. The ultimate goal is a single heavenly kingdom right here on earth, all operating under God's sovereignty with one people and one unified culture. And again, this isn't just an abstract idea. The sermon gets very specific. It imagines a world with no more immigration offices, no more national borders, where everyone is united by a single mother tongue, the Korean language. When you boil it all down, the entire cosmic struggle described in the sermon really comes down to this one fundamental choice. It's a choice between God's way, which is all about unity and sacrificing for the whole, and Satan's way, which is about division, divide and conquer, and selfish indulgence. And the sermon builds to this final, really startling metaphor. It's just a perfect summary of its whole message about the heavenly army's weapons. Here, love isn't some soft, passive emotion. No, it's portrayed as an atomic bomb, an overwhelmingly powerful, world-altering force that's designed to just obliterate opposition and cleanse all corruption. So, from a world on fire to a war fought with love, this sermon lays out a complete vision for a cosmic revolution. It starts with a universe at war and ends with a world made one. And the core idea that you're left with is the text's most challenging one. What does it truly mean to fight a war when the most powerful weapon in your arsenal is love?